As the Portland community knows, and as the Archdiocese of Portland knows, Joe Weston has a magnanimous heart that is very obvious in terms of his history of giving. So I'm seeing Joe Weston in that context and thinking Joe might go up and whisper in the Lord's ear, it's okay, give everybody the same. And my evidence of that is in Joe's giving spirit.
Now, Joe and I met more than 30 years ago. We've traveled a great deal together. We've been to, I think, 11 different countries in as many states over the last few years. He started at All Saints Grade School, he and his two brothers, and he then went on to Central Catholic High School as I did. And that's been a big portion of our common bond. And Joe went to work in the morning before school at Fran's Bakery, making sticky buns. Then in the afternoon, he went back to Fran's and made dressing. So he understood the value of working from an early age. Well, while he was at Fran's, he acquired his first duplex. And at a very young age, no one bothered to ask his age. He was about $500 short from having enough money to make the transaction work. So he asked Joe Franz if he would loan him $500. He did. Joe, of course, paid him back promptly, and that set Joe off on his run to become a credible real estate developer.
He grew up on the east side of Portland in a family that didn't have very much, and so he often shares stories and talks about what it was like growing up poor and how that economic challenge that his family experienced often led to him being excluded and not being able to have opportunities. And so much of what I think motivates Joe's philanthropy is having experienced that.
Joe came from a poor family situation, built his business up, and now has all these resources, but he's never forgotten his roots. He's never forgotten where he came from. He's never forgotten the others around him who struggled like he did. And so now Joe wants to give back.
Joe's real focus is granting to organizations that are actually serving people and helping improve the human condition. If you read the mission statement of the Weston Foundation, it speaks almost exclusively of helping people in a variety of needs, whether it's the elderly, whether it's the poor, people with developmental or physical disabilities. Those are the kinds of places where I think that tugs on Joe's heartstrings. If you go back to the early 1990s, as he started his philanthropic efforts, in that period of time he's made grants through his foundation at the Oregon Community Foundation of more than $170 million. In 2022 alone, it was $28 million, more than 500 nonprofit organizations that received grants, 1,700 scholarships through Joe's scholarship programs. It's the nonprofits that were helped, the work that he did, the emergency grants that he made during COVID to support communities. It's been a remarkable impact.
When I first met Joe, he was looking for a secretary, and I won. And we were together for a long time, and then we started dating, and then we married. We have 2 children, Tiffany and Jeff.
I think the greatest impact that my father had on me was teaching me to be of service to all others. And I truly hope that that is something that I also pass down to my son Weston and my stepdaughter Finley.
One thing I could tell about my father that maybe not a lot of people know is, yes, he's really busy in business and in work, but he's always had time for his children. When I went to undergrad school at Oregon State University, I was active in theater, and he attended all of my theater performances, and he was having to drive 90 minutes out to do that. And so even as busy as it was, as successful as he was, he still had time for his children, for his family.
Stories about Joe. How long do we have?
I was working at the bank. He was our very good customer. He called me and he had a request. He said that he had been talking to Monsignor Murphy, but at that time, Monsignor Murphy didn't have all the stripes, so it was just Father Murphy. I said, okay, Joe, what's he need? I was anticipating this was going to be painful, and it was. He said, well, he wants $250,000 in quarters. $250,000 in quarters? I said, Joe, that's 1 million quarters. That's over 6 tons of weight. But we eventually had a armored car roll out of the vault down to the riverfront with $1 million quarters.
He said to me on one occasion, "Let's go out to lunch at my favorite Scottish restaurant." And I looked at him quizzically, "Scottish restaurants?"
And I said, "Well, I don't think I've ever eaten at a Scottish restaurant."
And he looked at me and smiled and said, "McDonald's, are you coming?"
Of course, he was referring to McDonald's. That's a classic Joe. I think he's used it on lots of people besides me. He's careful about his own resources and he lives a simple life.
Since 2006, he's made 50 grants to Catholic Charities for almost $2 million. It is an organization that he considers their work to be very important.
So I would think an organization like Catholic Charities appeals to Joe and has appealed to Joe because of its mission and who it serves.
His foundation meets once a year, and when we meet this year, we will approve grants that will bring the total disbursements from Joe's foundation to over $200 million, all in Oregon and Southwest Washington. Joe readily admits that he was raised in a good and decent, very middle-class family. Mother and father working for everything that they had, the 3 boys. They left a lasting impression on him. He had nothing, he achieved enormous wealth, and he doesn't want it for himself. The only beneficiary in his will is his foundation. Thank you to Joe for creating incredible wealth through hard work that you have no intention of using on yourself, only for the benefit of other people.
Stories that exemplify my father's generosity. I don't know many other people that are giving their entire life's earnings to charity, so I think that's a pretty significant gift.
Joe can be pretty tough on the outside and challenging and so on, and he has to be. That's part of the reason why he's been so successful. When you get down below that, there's a heart of gold and a willingness to bless others as he's been blessed. And that's something that I'll always remember about Joe.
Thank you, Dad, for everything you've done for me and our family. I know you work hard and you've provided a ton for our family. And thank you for everything you do for our community. You are a beacon of light and an example for others to follow. And thank you for that.
Dad, thank you so much for impacting this community in Portland and beyond with the generosity that you have. And thank you for impacting my life the way that you have as well and teaching me the great lessons that you have.
I love you dearly, Joe. You are a saint. One of the nicest men I know. Helping others all your life. You're a dear, dear man. Love you, honey.
His vision and his focus, those are intangibles, but they are so well reflected in how he has tried to prioritize his spirituality of philanthropy. And I really believe it's spiritually based.